Hello, everybody. I'm going to go over true dichotomies and a list of them. And as I said, I would. So as we experience dichotomies and as we understand them and the different perspectives that our brains have of each one of these things, and the more dichotomies we come up with and we can attribute to either the left or right hemisphere's way of thinking, the better we can understand the world. So what I kind of expect is that the larger concepts that cover more things are going to be of the right hemisphere. So that's things like metaphysical and experiential dichotomies, because experiences, not like observations or empirical evidence, experience is like more of an emotion, more intuition driven. So it's like pain and pleasure. Those are more abstract. And I would expect more physical things, like the true physical dichotomies I have listed here, to be of the left mind, things that you can grasp, things that you can simplify into a very easy way to look at it. And that's why, like, I used the example cold and hot in my original document, was because it's it's both tangible and measurable. So it's something that's very easily a physical aspect of reality as well as an experiential and metaphysical aspect. And we use it to say stuff all the time, like people are cold. Like we use that as a way of framing people's personalities or attitudes towards things, because it's also a metaphysical concept. So that's why I used that, because it was easy to understand it with both hemispheres of thinking. So as you notice all the different patterns between the left and right hemisphere, and one day I'll go over the differences between the left and right hemisphere. I need to do that actually, so you guys can have draw your own connections from it. Maybe you'll have the same connections that I drew. But today we're just going to go over true dichotomies. So not all of them form those patterns that we're going to go over, but a lot of them can be rationalized. You can rationalize the extremes of these in your head, like if you want to. Like I'll just say what they are and then just picture, okay, if I were to think of the absolute smallest amount of this, could I ever reach that? And then if the answer is no, then you found a true dichotomy. And if the answer on the other end is like, could I ever have the opposite, the more extreme, the other extreme end? If the answer is no, then both ends of the dichotomy are impossible to achieve, at least with our current information, and therefore you have yourself a true dichotomy. And I haven't thought of a thing yet that doesn't follow this trend, that is true of reality. So we can rationalize things, but it's not true of reality. So I can say something is 26 pounds, but a pound is both a social construct and a rationalization, because you're selecting a specific point along the spectrum of weight, and then you're saying that this is what it is. But in reality, it's kind of flowing. It's not exactly that number. And if you look even more precisely at it, you'll see that it shifts around a bit. It's not going to be exactly what that number is. If you measure the same thing in two different locations, it'll change. So it's more of a flow between states. And obviously there's some you could say like consistency, but it's like we're only limited by our instrumentation, right? So the more accurate we get, which is impossible to achieve perfect accuracy, but the more accurate we get, the better we can understand this. And obviously each extreme end is impossible to reach, and the closer you get to it, the harder it is to achieve. So it's like if you try to keep getting closer and closer to absolute hot or absolute cold, it's going to get harder and harder to achieve. So the first three, I found this was interesting. I kind of made this connection. I'm not sure if this is how like religious scholars thought of it, or like this was the concepts they were trying to elicit. But the first three true dichotomies, I connected it with like the Father, the Holy Spirit, and the Son, the Father, and the Holy Spirit. And this is kind of how I thought of it. It's like space is the Father. It's like it's what created all of existence. It's what brought everything here. Like you don't need time to bring things. And that's why they rationalize the 6 days of time or whatever. But it's like, in reality, it was just arbitrary, like whatever. They're like, I don't care what I choose. I'm just going to choose whatever number sounds cool to me. But they were like, you know, whatever created it had to create a space. So in many religious philosophical traditions, the Father represents the origin, the source, and the overarching presence that encompasses all of creation. Space is a vast expanse with all existence and takes place, mirrors this role. It's the container of the universe, the backdrop against which all physical phenomena occur. And space is in us. Space is everywhere. And so if like the God is in you, then he is of this nature of space, of being everywhere, ever omnipresent. And I'm not sure if like omniscience would count, because if it's in the space of our brain, then it knows everything we're thinking. Like, it's everywhere. And that's what, I'm sure that's how they conceptualized it, but omnipresent, and then it's like, you can't get rid of space. There's nothing you can do. Space eats matter. If there's too much of it, space will just eat the matter. It's just like, it's the strongest force in our universe, space. It swallows everything. If we get too much, if we try to overpower it, so you just get a black hole. So it's the strongest force. So it makes sense that would represent what you would say the Father or God is. So yeah, that's kind of my take on that. And then the Holy Spirit, like if you think of time, like if you think of what a spirit is, it's a lot of the time it's a body, or like a person's being that continues on after they die. And if you're using your right brain and how you think of that comprehensively, in a total meaning of what that means, is that your physical body is going to eventually just change back to the form of life. But the deeds and the personality and who you were are going to echo through people into eternity. Like you interact with one person, boom, all your interactions interact with other people. So everything you do just echoes through eternity, and you have so much to offer the world. So make sure that you understand that the Holy Spirit is inside of you as well. And it can be. Holy Spirit offers described as a force that moves through and animates life, guiding and influencing events. Time fits this role as its dimension that drives change, progress, and unfolds events. Time is what allows for movement, growth, and experiencing life. So the Holy Spirit, that's the way I think of it, is time. It's like you cross time. Okay. And you have that spirit in you. And then matter and energy is the sun. The rationale is that the sun, Jesus Christ, represents tangible physical manifestation of the divine, bridging the gap between spiritual and material. Matter and energy are fundamental substances of the physical universe and embody the tangible reality in which life takes form. So it's, we are matter and energy, interchangeable between the two. So it makes sense that would be the sun. Like the sun is Jesus. So if you're trying to equate what that means, it would mean that the physical incarnation of God was Jesus. And I'm fine with accepting that. And then obviously it's tangible transformation and embodiment. Okay. So true physical dichotomies. We already went over cold and hot, and that's the whole rationale behind it. So you can think of light and dark. You can even look these up. Like these are physical, so it's very obvious answers. Like look up or even think in your head, what is the least amount of light possible? And is it possible to get less than that in a given space? And if you look it up, it's crazy. I thought it was possible to have an absolute no light in an area and like vacuum it out with somehow, like take all the light out, all the particles, but it's impossible. It's impossible to have an absolute vacuum, which I think is another, I didn't even put that one. So vacuum is another dichotomy. another true dichotomy, and I need to list out obviously less and more of air, I guess, more material, whatever the case may be. But even anywhere in space, you can go billions of miles away in the middle of nowhere, and you would expect to find nothing there. But there's light there, there's dark there, there's something there, there's everything there, there's matter there, like there's everything, and there's nowhere in space that doesn't have it. Okay, so future, past. I don't even know if this one's, I should have put this one physical. It probably should be more metaphysical, but the future and past, it has an effect on everything. So if nothing was in motion, nothing would happen. So there'd be nothing happening. So there's no way to have a future or past. But as we move along, we're moving along in a flow through time. It's not like little segments. It's a flow, and I think time will last forever, and time has lasted forever, because I don't think there was a beginning, and I don't think there's going to be an end, because the dichotomous nature of reality. And if everything in nature that I see is of the nature of a true dichotomy, then how can future and past not be? So I don't think the future will ever end, and I don't think the past ever started, which is weird. It's like, how did it not start, and how will it not end? That seems both contradictory and illogical. Well, just based on keeping true to this understanding of reality, that's the answer I come to. So that's the answer of my right hemisphere, and I'll probably be wrong, but who knows? It seems consistent, at least. So then you have soft and hard. So obviously you can't have something that's perfectly soft, because it would just not exist. Even air has hardness to it, you could say. And then infinitely hard, And then small, big, high pitch, low pitch, fast or slow, heavy, light, wet, dry, dense or rare, strong or weak, sharp or dull. So a lot of these have different characteristics, but like sharp and dull, that is a material characteristic that is different than amount. So it's like shape. Like it even applies to shapes having a true dichotomy. So but this is a concept that we've articulated for our uses with our left hemisphere. So this is a useful thing that Lucifer, the light bringer of our left hemisphere, has given us, this understanding of what sharp and dull is. But in reality, it manifests in a true dichotomy. You cannot get perfect sharpness. It's impossible. Like you just keep getting sharper and sharper, like attaching either harder and harder things to the end of it, or making it more and more precise at the end of it. And there's no way to achieve that. And also for absolute dull, like there's no way to make something perfectly dull. It would just be like flat. So there's no way to make something perfectly flat. Okay, so you guys can obviously think about all the rest of them and how you can imagine what the extreme ends would look like if we were like rationalize the extreme, but it's impossible to reach that, and also understand that. So then there's the metaphysical ones, like freedom and constraint. Like people have this idea that there's a dichotomy between freedom and control, you could say. Even like can you have absolute control over something? It's impossible. And you would say like somewhere in the middle between control and freedom is, I would say, a transition from manipulation to persuasion. And then, obviously if you intersect that with love, if you're manipulating somebody out of love, like it's better than just pure manipulation, but like these are how you would intersect these metaphysical things. It's like, where are you on the manipulation scale? How manipulative are you being? But also how loving are you being in the process? And they could offset each other, you could say, morally, but in the end, like this is how you would use those. It's like the presence and absence. Like how present are you? You can't be completely present and you can't be completely absent. Like you're always going to be here forever. and you'll never go away. So you're always here and you'll never be able to leave. So you're going to be here forever. And then faith and doubt. It's impossible to doubt, because in doubting, you're acknowledging that there's some level of faith that you can have, and then that means you have to have faith in understanding that. So you have faith no matter what. And then in doubt, or so in having absolute faith, you have to have doubt. Like, you can't have absolute faith, because you'd have nothing else to do. There's nothing else to do, and that's impossible, because your body's automatically just going to do other things. So you don't really have a choice in any absolute. There's no way to have an absolute for you in your mind in any way. And this is why, like, Star Wars says only Sith deal in absolutes. It's because it's literally a representation of what religious scholars have been trying to get across, is like there's this Luciferian intellect rationalization that they're trying to get people to understand is wrong, and I wouldn't say it's evil, but it's not an accurate representation of reality, and it leads societies to decay over time through rationalizations of things. And it makes everything boring, and makes everyone hate each other, and because of the left hemisphere is most of the things you would associate with Lucifer. And I'll go over all of them in another video. But so you can just read through all these and just go through the same process with each one of these true dichotomies. And you can realize, like, it's impossible to achieve any of these, especially since a lot of these are bifurcated in your brain. Your one side of your brain is going to be doing something else. Like, your left hemisphere cannot love, like true love, the way I define it. Your left brain's going to be doing something else while your right brain's doing love. So there's no way you can do any of these metaphysical things if it's lateralized to one hemisphere, because your other hemisphere is going to be doing something else. So that's impossible. Yeah, and then I would say these two are very important, and I probably should have put these at the top right after the first three true ones, but these are bearing out in science, and this is probably the ones that I need to start with people to understand, like, because they're so relevant and they're so useful in our lives. Because obviously understanding absolute sharp and absolute dull does not help you in your life. You're like, all I know is like this much of the spectrum of hard and, sharp or dull. Like, that doesn't help me to understand past that. So I understand that. But these normal distributions, these can be affected by our minds. So in creating our rationalizations, we affect how much we care about each other, how much fairness, cheating, loyalty, betrayal, all these things that occur in our minds of morality, we can affect these with culture. So we need to make sure that we are not of the rationalistic perspective, or it will destroy us. So this is a cycle that repeats itself over and over again. Is that societies come up, they rise, and they fall, and everybody sees this pattern, and they recognize it in history and science, everything. And the reason for it is a lot of this, like, as societies decay, it's because of this rationalist thinking, this depravity, this people who come to these rationalist perspectives, this hedonistic pleasure, seeking all the different aspects that the left hemisphere offers us. So we need to submit our left hemisphere verbally, holding holy things and relational things in our right hand, and have our relationship in our mind open up our right hemisphere. So I'm going to keep advocating for that. I'll probably try to say that in every video, that we need to try to submit our brains to our right hemisphere and the relationship aspect to it, because that's what people have. When they have these spiritual experiences, it is their right hemisphere opening up to the ideas that I'm trying to convey. And I hope everybody has that experience in their life at some point. And that's what I'm going to try to do for everyone, unlock that frame of view that what I'm trying to articulate is of the right hemisphere. So, care and harm, fairness, cheating, loyalty, betrayal. These are the 6 true dichotomies of our morality, and everything falls along one of these 6. So, and this one is mostly what we would, the biggest one that like covers liberals. Liberals, this is their primary moral foundation, and this is of the Luciferian intellect. So it makes sense that everybody's at odds, especially on the religious front, that against liberals, is because that's all they take into account. But guess what? Guess what Jonathan Haidt had to say about conservatives? He says that they think of every single one. And this is why people who are of the right mind think like conservatives, and conservatives think like of the right mind. And obviously it's not true of all of them, because that would be another absolute, and it's impossible to achieve 100% across the board. You're going to have anomalies, you're going to have other things that are affecting it. But my framework accounts for that. I understand that there's no, in a true dichotomy, there's no such thing as absolutes. So it's going to be a mixture of things. But then you also have, I think there is libertarians here. And then libertarians here, I think. So we can attribute these to specific groups of people. So it's useful in that way. And these all follow the same characteristics of a true dichotomy. There's extreme ends of all these, like how much you can care about someone, how much you can harm them. Obviously, if you harm them too much, people just die. So there's like, yeah, there's an arbitrary, like rationalized limit of like, oh yeah, I harm someone this much, they die. But it's not like they're truly dead, so you just keep harming them. Like I guess it just stops. Like you can't harm somebody infinitely. You can't care about somebody infinitely. So what we do is we try to balance it. Like some harm is necessary, some harm is good. Conservatives take that into account. Like right hemispheric thinkers take harm into account. Like how much harm am I going to take today in order for me to be successful and achieve greatness in the future? And then care, you take care into account. Fairness, cheating. Like you don't want people to cheat you when you're playing games. Like if you feel angry when people are cheating, that's probably one that you're strongly against. And then obviously you want people to be fair in other ways too. So fair when playing games, obviously when people cheat in their relationship, other aspects like that. And then it has to do with loyalty and betrayal, sanctity, degradation, authority, subversion, and oppression and liberty. So all of these are important aspects, and I hope everybody goes out and studies moral dichotomies, because they are very important to understand the differences between how people think. And I'll eventually cover a lot of these concepts more in depth, especially as I get done with my full paper. I'm still trying to complete things so it's not partial while I'm reading it. But I'm excited to go over some of the final stuff when I'm done, and even past that, because once I'm done with the framework, then I can go over a lot more things with you guys. So the big 5 personality traits: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, and agreeableness, and neuroticism. So these follow the same characteristics of a true dichotomy again. But so openness is more about your creativity, I would say this is more of the right hemisphere because it's creative. It's seeing the relationship between things. And then, which is interesting because liberals are often associated with higher openness. And then conservatives are more associated with higher conscientiousness. So there's a lot of interesting things that go into how these things apply to people. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed our understanding of true dichotomies, a list of them, and maybe this will broaden beyond just hot and cold, so you guys get an understanding of how many things this covers. And I can't even think of anything that it doesn't. Obviously shape, I think shape, but I just call that form because we're in forms, and shapes only exist as rationalizations. And I need to probably make a list of rationalizations too, because just because, like, let's say my mic, right? Just because it's this shape, I'm arbitrarily assigning it because there's a distinction between the form that it's taken and the form around it. So I've made the distinction between the two, but in reality it's just energy and matter. And then there's more energy and matter surrounding it. But because of the difference in my interaction with it and the way it interacts with reality, I see two different things. So that's how the right hemisphere sees it. It doesn't see a mic alone. It sees the mic in relationship with the air, in relationship with the desk. Like everything is like together as one. And this is the original religious thinking and how they thought. And I hope everyone can eventually think like that in today's age. And I hope that we bring that back, because not only was the way they spoke very beautiful, but they created so much art. They created so much beautiful things. So I hope we get back to that. All right. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good day. Love you.